Are you tired of feeling powerless in conflict? Today we explore two radical playbooks, the Tactical Manipulation of Dark Psychology 101 and the Peace-Based Approach of the Anatomy of Peace. Learn to spot mind games by seeing both methods applied to the same scenario. Discover which strategy, defensive tactics or radical peace, gives you more control. Master these two side-by-side approaches to transform how you handle every future confrontation. Imagine this: you're in a relationship at home or at work where every disagreement somehow flips back onto you. You start out feeling right and you end up feeling confused, guilty, maybe even crazy. You apologize more, you explain more, and still you feel weaker each time. According to Michael Pace's book, Dark Psychology 101, that's not random. That's often a sign that someone is using covert emotional manipulation, CEM, to influence your feelings in a way you don't see. Covert emotional manipulation is defined as a hidden attempt to control your emotional state for someone else's benefit without you understanding how or why it's happening. The manipulator's goal is not mutual good, it's control. You see this in romantic relationships, friendships, families, and at work. A partner who always makes you feel guilty, a friend who constantly needs rescuing, a boss who triggers fear or duty you can't explain. These are typical arenas where covert emotional manipulation thrives. Here are some of the key moves it explains. First, love bombing. This is when someone hits you with an intense storm of affection, attention, gifts, or praise right at the beginning. It feels like you've finally met the one person who sees you, supports you, and is different from everyone else. The manipulator uses this to soften your defenses and make you emotionally dependent. Then the tone shifts. Love bombing is often followed by positive reinforcement. That means you only get warmth, approval, or affection when you behave the way they want. After that comes intermittent positive reinforcement. You get their approval only sometimes, even when you do what they want. That unpredictability makes you chase their validation harder without knowing why. On top of that, you may experience reality denial, also known as gaslighting. This is where your memory and sanity are slowly attacked. The manipulator will correct your recollection of events, always making their version seem more credible, until you start trusting their memory more than your own. Over time, you stop trusting your own mind and lean on them for your sense of reality. Now put yourself inside this. Wrong way to respond if you don't know any of this. You're with someone who showers you with attention, then becomes cold when you set boundaries. You feel anxious when they pull away, so you give in more, open up more, do more. When your memory of a fight doesn't match theirs, you assume you're too emotional or flawed. You try to fix yourself instead of questioning their tactics. The result is that you feel small, confused, and scared of losing them. Your behavior is now shaped by their system, not by your own values. Right way to respond using the book's methodology. You notice the love bombing and ask, is this earned or is this a tactic? You watch how their walk seems to be linked to you pleasing them. You label it as reinforcement, not love. When they contradict obvious facts, you recognize reality denial and see the pattern of eroding your trust in yourself. Now, instead of apologizing more, you pull back. You document events, slow down the relationship, and test whether their actions match their words over time. If they escalate control, you don't try harder to prove yourself. You consider leaving or putting strong boundaries in place just by naming the tactics: love bombing, positive reinforcement, intermittent reinforcement, reality denial. You take back power. You move from I'm crazy to I understand this pattern and I can choose how to respond. But Dark Psychology 101 doesn't stop at relationships. It goes into dark persuasion, pushing someone to act against their own interests for the persuader's gain. It describes the long con, where the persuader spends time building trust, offering real help, and making you associate their guidance with good outcomes before steering you into choices that benefit them and harm you. It also unpacks graduality, getting you to take small steps, each one not too shocking, until you reach a place you never would have accepted in one leap. You might start with a small favor or a minor rule breaking, then move to bigger compromises until you feel too deep to back out. On top of that, there's undetected mind control. subtle influence using your goals and vulnerabilities. If you badly want love, status, or money, someone can nudge your choices with seemingly small cues, restricted options, or carefully timed suggestions, so you walk yourself into what they want. Used one way, this knowledge lets you defend yourself. Used another way, it turns you into a predator. Pace's book is clear that how you use these tools is your responsibility. So if your main pain point is "I always get played," this methodology says learn the game. Learn the patterns, understand how dark persuaders and covert manipulators work, so you stop giving your power away blindly. But what if the person across from you isn't a predator? What if the conflict is a cycle you're both feeding? That's where we flip the script to radical peace. The Anatomy of Peace by the Arbinger Institute starts with a different question, not just what are they doing to you, but what is your heart doing in this conflict? It tells a story set at a desert program called Camp Moriah, where parents bring troubled kids and end up discovering that the real work begins with themselves. The book explains that in any interaction, you are either in a state of heart at peace or heart at war. With a heart at peace, you see others as people, human beings with fears, hopes, and complexity, just like you. You can still disagree, confront, or set firm boundaries, but your actions come from a place that recognizes their humanity. With a heart at war, you see others as objects. They become obstacles blocking your goals, vehicles you can use to get what you want. Irrelevances you can ignore. In this state, you exaggerate their faults, minimize your own, and constantly look for evidence that you're right and they're wrong. That inner posture leads to what the book calls collusion, both sides acting in ways that provoke exactly what they hate in each other. There's a scene where Avi, one of the leaders, describes a fight with his wife over edging the lawn. He eventually does the edging to keep peace in the family, but he does it with a bad attitude, furious the entire time. Outwardly, he's doing the so-called right thing. Inwardly, his heart is fully at war, seeing his wife as demanding, unreasonable, and unfair. The result is that the conflict gets worse, not better, even though his behavior looks cooperative. The book argues that this happens in parenting, marriage, work, and even politics. You can correct, punish, or help someone in a way that makes things worse, because your way of being is attacking them even if your words sound calm. So what do you do if you feel powerless in that pattern? The Anatomy of Peace offers a process. First, notice your signs of a heart at war: blame, superiority, constant justification, needing allies against someone, or rehearsing their faults in your mind. Second, recognize self-betrayal. This is when you feel a quiet inner sense to do something kind or fair for someone, even something small, and you ignore it. When you betray that sense, you start justifying yourself, and your view of that person and yourself twists to support your choice. Third, step back and ask, what is life like for this person? What burdens are they carrying? How have I helped create or maintain this situation? That shift is how you begin moving from heart at war to heart at peace. Fourth, act on new peaceful impulses when they arise, apologizing honestly, listening instead of defending, writing a letter, or rebuilding a broken relationship where it makes sense. The book repeatedly shows that when people act from a heart at peace, they don't become soft. They actually become clearer and more courageous. There's a powerful example with a young woman named Maeve who endured non-consensual trauma and later compelled by her aggressor to support his path toward a self-imposed end. She refused to justify his aim and over time learnt to see him as a person without excusing his actions. When she wrote to him from that position, it freed her from being controlled by the past, not because he was suddenly good, but because her own heart no longer needed the war to feel right. This is a deeper kind of power. Even if the other person never changes, you are no longer driven by resentment or self-justification. Now let's put you into a concrete situation and run it twice, once with dark tactics, once with radical peace. Picture this. You work with someone who constantly undermines you in front of your boss. They hog credit, make subtle digs about your performance, and then act supportive when you confront them. You feel powerless because any direct complaint makes you look oversensitive. Version 1, you use the Dark Psychology 101 approach. You start by analyzing their behavior like a tactician. You notice they flatter the boss heavily. That's their love-bombing target. With you, they use guilt. I thought we were a team. And implied threats. You don't want to look difficult right now, do you? You stop reacting emotionally in front of them. Instead, you document specific incidents and outcomes. You prepare examples where they misrepresented your work, and you choose a calm moment to present those facts to your boss, focusing on patterns, not personal attacks. You also stop feeding them information they can twist. You shorten your replies, avoid venting to them, and watch how they react when you can no longer push your buttons. If they escalate manipulation, you already have a record and a plan for going to HR or for repositioning yourself in the company. Used well, you haven't turned into a villain. You become harder to control. You move from emotional prey to a strategic player. Your sense of power increases quickly because you understand the game on the table. Played differently, you use the anatomy of peace approach. You still see the behavior clearly, but instead of only focusing on tactics, you ask, how am I seeing this person? As pure evil, as nothing but a threat. You notice that inside you're rehearsing stories of their awfulness, imagining takedowns and recruiting co-workers to your side. That's a heart at war. You then ask, what might their life be like? Maybe they're insecure about their own standing. Maybe they grew up in cutthroat environments where value equals visibility. You don't excuse them, you just allow them to be a human being instead of a demon. From that stance, you still act. You might have a direct conversation like, when we're in meetings, I notice that you present our shared work as your own, and it creates confusion about my contribution. I want us both to look good, but I need accurate credit for what I do. Your tone is firm, not poisonous. When you talk to your boss, you present facts without dramatizing their character. You also stop gossiping about them because you recognize how that keeps your own heart at war. This approach may take longer to change the situation. You might still have to protect yourself, move teams, or even leave. But you walk away with less bitterness, less inner poison, and a better chance of not repeating the same pattern with the next colleague. So which method actually helps you win the conflict? If your immediate crisis is that you keep getting blindsided by manipulators, partners who love, bomb, and ghost, bosses who guilt trip and gaslight, friends who weaponize your empathy, then the methodology in Dark Psychology 101 is more practical in the short term. It teaches you the specific moves they use and how to recognize them fast, so you stop being an easy target. If your ongoing problem is that you live in constant conflict, even with people who aren't full-blown manipulators, then the anatomy of peace offers deeper, longer-term power. It shows you how your own heart at war invites the very behavior you hate, and how changing your way of being changes the pattern of the conflict itself. For most real situations today, you're dealing with both manipulative tactics in some relationships and mutual collusion in others. That means the strongest position isn't choosing one book as the winner, but using them together. You use Dark Psychology 101 to see and neutralize hidden tactics, so you stop bleeding power to people who don't have your interests at heart. And you use the anatomy of peace to clean up your own side of the street, so you're not ruled by blame, self-justification, and a heart that needs enemies in order to feel right. The conflict only really ends when you're no longer easy to manipulate on the outside and no longer at war on the inside.